Hey friends, welcome to Bokeh, a podcast exploring the ever-blurring lines between the personal and business lives of professional photographers. This is your host, Nathan Holritz, and I'm happy that you can join me today in connecting with photographers and entrepreneurs as we discuss photography, business, and, oh yeah, that sometimes messy thing that we call life. This podcast, it's brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Just visit photographersedit.com. All right, Bokeh Podcast listeners, we are here for yet another episode today, and with a new friend of mine, brand new friend of mine, Kishia Saffold. Thank you so much, Kishia, for making time for the Bokeh Podcast.
I'm so excited to be here today.
And I was actually telling you this right before we got started. You've got just such a great vibe and energy about you that I'm naturally drawn in. So I'm just that much more excited for our conversation today. But I have to ask you right away, tell me about your photography business name. This is not something I sent to you a question ahead of time, but I'm just so curious. Short Stuff Photo, where does that come from?
So obviously I'm vertically challenged. My last name is Saffold, and apparently that's very difficult to say.
Okay.
So I get Stafford, Scafford, just any way you can butcher Saffold, that's what happens. And so I originally thought my photography business was going to be centered around children photography. And I just found that in my market and with my experience that that didn't necessarily translate to the dollars that I needed to sustain my business. But that's initially how the short stuff photography came about.
Okay, well, so I just wanted some context to the conversation. And by the way, for those of you listening in, we'll make sure to link to Kishia's both website and Instagram in the show notes. It's shortstuffphotography.com and then Short Stuff Photo on Instagram. But I had to ask because I just wanted to get some context to that. It's an eye-catching, attention-grabbing name, and I love it, but I had to get context to it. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's just jump right in. First question normally ask our guests here at the Bokeh Podcast is about their technique for time, or more specifically, how they create time for themselves in their lives so that they don't have to stay behind the computer working nonstop. Is there something that you do in your day-to-day, week-to-week workflow that gives you more free time in your life?
So this is going to sound completely unrelated, but I get up every morning at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
I go to the gym at 5 a.m. So I'm at the gym working out from 5 to 6.
Okay.
Initially, it was about, losing weight. Hey, I'm going to just, eat the frog and just knock it on out. But what I found out is that getting up at 4 a.m. and going to that gym class, it keeps me disciplined in all the areas of my life. So that's in eating, that's in doing all the small things that I dislike. And that's what has really tremendously helped me as far as keeping my time, because I'm up early. Now I have a regimen. So when I get up, after I come back from the gym, listening to morning motivational videos on YouTube. Like if you YouTube like morning motivation, you'll get like this great, list of, I don't know what they playlist or something that'll come up and it will have you pumped. And so I come home, I do my meditation, I make my coffee, and then I'm able to just start with my day. But that really keeps me aligned and centered.
Okay, so this is interesting on a number of fronts. First of all, I was literally just having a conversation with Paul Seiler for the podcast, but we were talking about the significance of routine and how that actually helps encourage even discipline, as you're alluding to, Kishia. But let me start first with 4 a.m. Why specifically 4? Like, that is so early. Like, I love, for example, like a 6 a.m. wake up time, but 4 is just taking it to a whole different level. How did you land on that time?
Because the class is at 5 a.m.
Okay, fair enough. That's very practical then. Can I ask what type of workout class?
So I go to, I don't know if we can say the name of the company, but it's Orange Theory.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like it because it's a 1-hour workout. It's led by a coach. So I'm not fumbling and foddering around, because I will mess things up. Like if I'm tired, I'll be like, look, I'm tired. I'm going home. I'm only 10 minutes into my workout.
Yeah. Well, I had the opportunity to do an Orange Theory, actually a couple of Orange Theory workouts a little while back with my friends Sean Austin and Todd Watson with Show It and Kiss Books. And this is something that Sean does on a regular basis, and I'd never had the experience before, but I can imagine that at like 5, we'll call it 5:10. By 5:10 a.m., that class starts at 5:10 a.m., you are more than waking up between the music and the type of workout. It's intense. And of course you got the coach talking to, or maybe even yelling at you in some cases.
That's right.
It is intense. But I will say, walking out of those classes was so invigorating. That was such a great hard workout. How many times a week do you go to that?
So I go between 3 and 5 now.
Okay. That's really, now I will say too, and for those of you who might be curious, you're like, I'm looking for a new workout opportunity or solution here, because obviously there are a variety of types of workouts out there. It's on the pricier side, but what you get for the money is kind of mind blowing. In fact, they're actually opening in Orange Theory just down the street from where I live right now, and it is so tempting to sign up, even for 1 or 2 classes a week. Because what you get in that hour is incredible. It's a intensity or high intensity interval style training. It mixes cardio and calisthenics and a little bit of weights. It's amazing. So I can see where the motivation might come to get up that early.
And that's exactly right. And I got to say, the reason why I love the gym is also probably, it's like a love-hate relationship, because you pay all this money. It's the most money I've ever paid for a gym membership.
Yeah.
But I'm the person before who was paying $10 or $30 a month and not ever going to the gym.
Yes. Yeah, the gyms get you on that, right? They charge you $10, $20. They know that you probably won't follow through, but then it'll come out of your bank account. You really won't think about it. And then in the meantime, you're not going to the gym. And so I guess putting more investment into it then motivates you to go more consistently.
And it's I guess, to me, and it also kind of aligns with what I'm doing in business. And maybe that because of me doing what I'm doing is what made me say, oh, okay, you know what? Let me pay the extra money to actually go and to actually get in shape. And then it had all these extra benefits that came along with it that I didn't know was going to be a part of the. Now I'm more disciplined. I don't know if I've never been just a completely undisciplined person, but definitely concerning my health or as far as eating right and stuff like that. I never consider myself a health fanatic,
Well, and this is by far, this is definitely not a health podcast per se, but I think it's worth continuing to explore the psychology of this a little bit more, because I know as a photography business owner, as a business owner, period, and certainly being involved in the industry now for almost 20 years, this can be a challenge for our fellow photography business owners. Number one, having the discipline just to have a consistent workout. 2, very closely tied to that, I want to ask you about this actually, is eating healthily in a consistent manner as well. And then just finding out what system works best, right? Because we in many cases have the freedom to, at least some of us anyway, if we don't have kids or otherwise, to sleep in a little bit late. And then that just kind of, that tendency to start off slow can translate to the way that we function the rest of the day in some cases. But you mentioned, and the psychology of this is interesting to me, you mentioned that the discipline to get up that early, to go to the gym, and of course also the investment associated with that has then translated to the way that you eat as well. Can you explain maybe the mentality behind that?
Yeah, I had this great kick butt workout, and then I'm going to go undo all my work by going through the drive-through.
Yeah.
And then even that, so one of the things my family and I were laughing about the other day is, one of the big places, and that they're not consistent. And so, you go think you're going to get these French fries, it's like, hey, don't think you're going to get hot, fresh food 2 times in a row. If you get hot, fresh food, just take your blessing and move with it. Don't go back thinking you're going to get this great food 2 times in a row. And so I like, for me, just finding out that I'm paying all this extra money, thinking you're tricked into thinking it's not a lot, but it turns out that it really is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going through a drive-through, the food isn't good. The service sucks. And then I might as well just cooked and prepared the meal at home and been healthy.
Well, and like you said, not undo all the work that you're doing at the gym. It is just totally illogical in the end. And so I like hearing your thought process on this. And for those of you who are curious, I would recommend at least going and taking one of these Orange Theory classes. It may even kind of change your whole perspective about what it means to work out. Not only the intensity of the classes. It kind of sheds light and perspective on the lack of intensity maybe in the workouts that you're already doing. But
that's exactly right.
Yeah, but it also just shows how being involved in, I mean, it's a very community driven workout, right? So you're all hooked in. You've got your little armband on, so it's tracking your heart rate, and those stats go up on the screen. And it becomes a bit of a competition, which is a lot of fun. You're motivated by seeing others working out around you, and you've got the coach that's driving you, that's pushing you. It's a really great environment. So this is definitely not sponsored by Orange Theory, but we'll make sure to link to them in the show notes for those of you who are curious about that. Definitely make sure, I'll go ahead and throw this caveat in just to play it safe. Make sure that you've had a doctor's visit before you go, because it is a pretty intense workout. You want to make sure you're in the right place physically to get involved with that. But thank you for shedding light on this so-called technique for time. And I think it's a conversation that's important, because the way that we start off our day, and particularly the way that we take care of our bodies, can translate dramatically to the way that we then certainly run our personal lives, but also run our business. And that's really important to know. I mean, I've seen this impact even recently in my life as I've prioritized this even more. So thanks for starting us off this way, Kishia. Talk to us about one of the most impactful books that you've read.
The most impactful book, I thought really hard about this question, and I had to conclude that it's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And because, it has, this long list of principles: desire, faith, organized planning, persistence, the power of the mind and subconscious. And I feel like the reason why that really resonated with me is, I'm in Alabama, so I'm in the Bible Belt, right?
Yeah.
So, faith, it's without faith. Oh God, I'm about to butcher I'm not going to be a very good advocate for
No worries.
For quoting scriptures properly. But that basically you have to have faith in order to receive, right?
Yeah.
And so, one of the principles in this book is like, for a desire to come true, you have to have faith that it's possible and that it will come true. Mm-hmm. And, I can just say for myself, it's really easy to say, oh, well, this is happening for this person because they have this, or this happens for that person because they possess this special quality. Oh, but it won't happen for me. Grabbing that notion that our beliefs hold power and that you really do get what you believe. And that truly resonated with me. And then like one of the principles, like choosing your company wisely, even back to that Orange Theory example.
Yeah.
Cause I was like, hey, I'm not a punk. Like, you're not going to punk me like that. I can run my first workout. I like to fell out. I was like, oh my God, I'm seeing stars.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, being surrounded by that right kind of motivation that's going to inspire and challenge you.
100%.
And just realizing, the people that you're around that, are your negative Nancy's, or, what I'm saying? So it was that I feel like that was the thing that what was really impactful to me about the book, was realizing that I had the power of my mind. I had to change what I thought and what I felt inside, that it is possible for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned two words there, which I've either alluded to or spoken to on the podcast in the past, but one is belief and another one is choice. And I literally have these words tattooed in Japanese on my arms, because I'm realizing, I realize the significance of these concepts in my life personally, and they certainly carry over into business as well. But first of all, the idea of belief, it can certainly have religious connotation, but at the end of the day, beliefs literally drive everything that we do, right? Like I go and sit down in a chair because I believe it's going to hold me up. Fortunately, at least in most cases, that is actually an accurate belief. But then there are certain beliefs that we build, whether consciously or subconsciously, that aren't necessarily enabling beliefs. And so it's important to understand the belief or set of beliefs that we develop. Those beliefs, if they're strong enough, as Tony Robbins talks about, drive emotion. And then those emotions, if they're strong enough, drive action. So at the root of the way that we behave, whether it's in our personal lives or business lives or combination of the above, it's driven by belief. And we have the ability to choose those beliefs. And this is a really powerful concept to grasp, and it might take a little bit of practice, consistent practice, but it can make a massive, massive difference in our personal and professional lives. So I love that you bring this to light. We'll make sure to link to that book in the show notes too. For those of you listening in, make sure you take advantage of the resource of the show notes. If you go to Bokeh Podcast, Bokeh podcast.com, you'll see a load of show notes there. The resources, anything that Kishia and I talk about today that is linkable will be linked there in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. Let me go to another question, Kishia. From the things that you've learned in business thus far, what is one of the most important lessons, or if you put another way, if you had 15 seconds to share a piece of advice with a fellow photographer, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Don't buy everything you see on YouTube.
Yes. And expound on that just a little bit. Like, what's your experience been in that realm?
You'll end up with a whole bunch of junk.
Yeah.
Because they'll sell you on, this end product. And just the whole short of it is we all start out as beginners. And the only way you're going to get better and master your craft is to just really, truly practice on a regular daily basis. And, I feel like I fell victim a few times to, you need this right here, to make your pictures amazing. And then I got it and it was like, okay, my pictures still suck. I don't even know what.
Yeah, it's not always about the equipment in the end, right? I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast before, but my first digital camera, because I actually started in film as a wedding photographer and then transitioned to digital in about 2005. But my first digital camera was a Nikon D1X, and back then this camera was at the top of its game. But in comparison to 2019 standards, I mean, the dynamic range was terrible. It was under 6 megapixels. I mean, the camera on my phone has more megapixels now, right? It's kind of funny to look back on, but even in retrospect, I can still, and if I had that camera now, I could still capture a beautiful image if I was conscientious of the technique used in capturing the image, and I don't have to have the latest, Sony mirrorless camera to do that. It's a lot of it's just understanding technique and what enables you to be able to capture an image from a technical standpoint that will allow you to use pretty much any equipment that you want to. Again, we've got cameras on our phones now that will capture stunning images if you understand how to use the equipment. So that's way, way more important. I think this is a great piece of advice and reminder for all of us.
That's exactly right.
Talk to us about your photography business and more specifically, something that we talk about on the podcast all the time. Your photography business is brand position. And I know that a lot of photographers aren't familiar with this particular phrase. So very simply, I would define a brand position as the unique selling point of your photography business, the thing that you do different than other photographers in your market. What would that be for you?
I think I tend to attract those who don't like taking pictures, who label themselves as not photogenic, because I guess because of my personality, I tend to make people feel very comfortable, and I'm really silly. I'm being very serious for you today.
Okay. You can be as silly as you'd like. It'll make the podcast that much more interesting.
Being very serious for your podcast today. But I subscribe to the Sue Bryce model, and where I offer the professional makeup.
Okay.
I do a quick turnaround. I know that's the area